The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to attack. With the Attack Style Wrestling Podcast. Here on the Attack Style Wrestling Podcast, you'll find youth and high school coaching tips for coaches, parents, and wrestlers, featuring Gable-trained NCAA champion and Hall of Fame high school coach Daryl Weber. Also featured is a monthly dialogue with legendary wrestling coach Dan Gable. Find out more on AttackStyleWrestling.com. Now, on to the show. Having some fun today on the Attack Style Wrestling Podcast, joined by Daryl Weber and his brother Lee Weber. We're talking wrestling. We're talking wrestling every episode, but we're talking today, should fun be the goal of wrestling? Should fun be the goal? Daryl, we hear so much about wrestling's tough. Wrestling builds character. You got to be tough. Rah, 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 rah. Grind, grind, grind. It's the grind, whatever. I think one company's like, embrace the grind. What is the deal with everybody saying that wrestling, you got to be tough? Of course you got to be tough, but should fun be the goal of wrestling, just like it is most any other sport, especially when you're starting out?
Well, I think there's a lot of talk about having fun, when it comes to competing on a big stage, and you hear this thrown around a lot. And, my belief is and I used to talk to my wrestlers about this all the time, if your overarching goal as a coach, and I'm talking about, obviously fun is probably the number one factor when you got a first year wrestler, you got elementary kids, you're trying to get them hooked on this sport. But if you're preaching that it's got to be fun, you should be having fun with this. I don't think that's the best message, especially if you've got, if you're a coach and that's your overarching goal is you're preaching, well, we're going to have fun. You're going to have fun here. And that's really what's behind your overarching philosophies behind your program. I think you're going to be selling your kids short. And I'll get into more on how, why I'm saying and why I feel this way. But it's like you got to be, if you got influence as a parent, as a coach, and you start throwing that around a lot, it can be a little bit dangerous. If that mentality, because people believe, kids, athletes, people are going to believe what you kind of put in their head a lot of times, not what's proven, not what is best for them, especially when the going gets tough, when they're struggling with losses and things like that. And if they've got things like, I'm not having fun to throw around, things go get tough, it's an easy way out. It's an easy way out. So I think it could be very dangerous just to put that philosophy and preach that philosophy. And I get it. It's a sales pitch a lot of times. You want to attract kids into your program. But if you're preaching that a lot and you've got these kids believing that, hey, I'm going to go out for wrestling and all I need to do is have fun. They're going to be in for a rude awakening, and things can go south real quick, and they can, get frustrated. And if they're just falling back on that whole philosophy, you can have trouble.
One thing you said there is like, you got to have fun, Kids can also see right through things. They'll believe what a coach says, but if you're sitting there saying, yeah, you got to have fun, and the coach isn't having fun, they're going to be like, well, you're full of crap. You're just feeding me a line of crap. So I think a lot of this starts with the first year kids to get them hooked, as you were saying, and then there's the retention. You get calls periodic. I get them, once a month about, some parent going, hey, my kid's not having fun. What should I do? That's the age old question. That's what do we do to keep our kids involved in wrestling and making it fun? Let's use a personal anecdote. I was a horrible wrestler. I think everybody in the sport of wrestling knows this, but I went out there to practice first time and it was fun. I'm not sure why it was fun. I think that might be a little bit on the athlete to just determine what's fun about getting, especially when you're later, like at a nationally ranked wrestling room, what's fun about getting the crap beat out of you? Nothing. Or there's something intrinsically like, okay, wow, it opens up a new set of doors, physically, mentally, that things you can do. So the fun part of it, there's so many different topics, and we're going to broach this in terms of the mentality of fun, things like games to have fun, the styles of wrestling that are fun, team building, that there's so many different elements that can make wrestling fun. The actual sport of wrestling doesn't have to be fun. You can have fun with your teammates while doing something that isn't fun. I mean, there are so many doors we can open here, Daryl.
On that note, I kind of have something to add on that, where what you were talking about, Jason, reminded me of a quote from, and I always think of this with, it's a Vince Lombardi quote, whether he said it or not, I don't know. It's attributed to him. It's there is something good in men that really yearn for discipline. And I think that holds true, obviously in football, but in wrestling, people get into wrestling for a lot of different reasons. And some people have fun, and by fun, maybe Tom Brands, I'm sure, had fun pushing himself to the brink of what's humanly possible. And he probably enjoyed that more than anything in the world. So there are definitely people in this world that love, and fun to them is to, go chop wood until you almost puke. But there's also fulfillment. I think more than anything, there's in today's world, there's 1,000 avenues to have fun in this world. Video games and whatever you want to do, your phone. Wrestling doesn't need to be fun, all the time. Like you said, to me, I had my brother ahead of me. He was a great wrestler, and I was kind of following the footsteps. And to me, the whole time I was in it the funnest part was the teammates. And the biggest thing I ever took away from wrestling was that I worked at something and I got better at it. And I became, my freshman year in high school, I was 8 and 9. I didn't even start the sectionals and districts. I got beat out. My senior year, I was 43-0. And from those 2 points, there was a lot of time that was, drudgery and a lot of hard work and a lot of not fun times. But the fulfillment and the learning that I took away from that is, I had fun at a lot of different places, a lot of different avenues outside of wrestling. Wrestling was not what I used to have fun. So, maybe I would have been better if I would have just had fun the whole time. But I don't know. I kind of meandered there. But
well, this goes to the point about you can't manufacture fun. It's got to be genuine.
Exactly.
There's the point you were saying. Wrestling as as a sport, the physical part of it, especially, we're talking about big matches, NCAA championships. You talk about Tom Brands, who's, the train like a madman with him and Terry. You've seen it for years, but you look at that and that doesn't look fun right off the bat. But then you watch guys, I think Penn State's kind of carried the flag recently for what fun wrestling looks like. And you've got Jason Dolphin, Zane Rutherford, and Bo Nickel. They look like they're having fun out there. They're just throwing stuff out there out of the bag of tricks that make it look fun. And they tell you, yeah, we're just having fun out there. And they honestly believe it. So there's, like you said, as the Tom Brands anecdote, he probably enjoyed running through a wall for fun. Where, and some people are like, well, I like creating new scrambles to have fun. There's so many things that drive different people. That's what makes the sport great. But again, you can't manufacture fun. I guess it's probably unearthing to each individual athlete. Okay, what do you find fun about this? And having them focus on that builds not just the character. I mean, they may be, like you said, an 8-9 wrestler, but they're going to be around the program their entire 4 years. They're not going to get run off because they're not starting. They're there because this wrestling to them is fun. Practices probably stink, but wrestling itself, as everything that comes with it, is fun.
Yeah, I will say that wrestling is, the term fun gets started thrown around in the way that you're talking about right there when people struggle. It's the word that for me to describe it would be, rather than as a coach, I'm going I'm going to make sure you guys all have fun in my program. You come here and you're going to have fun with wrestling. We know how tough it is, but this is the one place we're just going to focus on fun. No, you want to focus on, if you want to put a word on it, satisfaction. You're going to be satisfied. And that's when things are fun. When you feel, like Lee said, when you feel like you're making progress in whatever you're doing and you feel satisfied, you've got this feeling, hey, this is enjoyable. This is enjoyable. And the problem that I have with this kind of cultural shift, if you say, or, this whole, I mean, you see it from little kids, parents put this in their heads, other coaches talking about it, is that, like I said, when you start throwing around, well, I just go out there and have fun, and I bet when kids that say that, when they lose, they're not having fun. What keeps them coming back is the progress and the satisfaction of the hard work and all of those things. And that's what you want to get out of your athletes when they graduate, when they move on to the next level. If you've got this super talented athlete and you've just done everything, he's going to win 90% of his matches, and you've done everything you can just to make sure, he has fun. And he doesn't really deal with a whole lot of things that are not going to be fun while he goes through your program. You're short selling that kid big time. They don't understand how to deal with adversity at that point, and that's what wrestling's all about. So fun, you want things to be enjoyable, but the fact is, I mean, if you can, what if kids came off of a mat and they believed in this philosophy, and rather than they come off and they're struggling, they're getting beat left and right, and they're, I did it when I went to Iowa. I can't tell you how many times I left practice and went back to my dorm room, just got my tail whooped, just crushed for 2 hours, thinking, what am I doing here? Am I in the right spot? But kept moving forward. When you're in that state, it's, if you've been told, hey, you should be having fun. Wrestling should be fun. It's really easy to say, this isn't fun. But what if they came off and they said, I'm not feeling satisfied? Well, you can deal with that. You make your own breaks when it comes to creating satisfaction and kind of setting expectations. And Lee and I got talking about this, and we've talked, in wrestling circles, I've had talks about this for years, because it's always irked me that when I was a coach, it's hard enough to get kids out for wrestling, get them hooked on the sport, get them fired up to deal with wrestling is a tough sport. But two words or phrases that kind of always irked me that I had to deal with were when that was thrown out there, I'm just not having fun. Usually a kid, if he wanted to quit, that was easy. That was an easy way out. He comes in, I'm just not having fun anymore, coach. And I want to rattle his cage and say, well, you're not supposed to have fun. You're supposed to learn how to push through this type of stuff. Okay. And burnout. And I always used to tell people, there's no such thing as burnout. Burnout is a change in interest. You become more interested in something else. And somebody threw this term burnout in your head at some point, just like they threw this philosophy of you're supposed to have fun all the time in your head. And it's just real easy to latch onto those terms and use them as excuses. And they're, like I said at the beginning, the whole fun thing, I understand it. I get it. It's a marketing ploy. It's a sales pitch to get kids to think that they're going to come into this program. And it's great for elementary kids, for first year wrestlers in high school, trying to get those kids in. And if you're using that as a marketing ploy and a sales pitch to get kids into your program, but your whole program isn't based around just making sure they have fun all the time, well, then I understand it. But if your whole philosophy of your program is, unless you're an elementary coach, or you're just only dealing with kids just coming out for the sport, is only to have fun, well, kids are not going to learn the life lessons that wrestling can have to offer. Because to me, that's what, as a high school coach, that was the overarching goal all the time, is to prepare these kids to deal with tough times. And we were always doing things to have a good time. But if you want to get kids hooked on wrestling, make sure they're satisfied, make sure they're making progress all the time.
I think some of this could be the philosophical change of where we start using that word, because I just threw out the example of the 3 Penn State wrestlers. Of course, they're having fun. They're beating the crap out of everyone. They're that good. And that's the thing about wrestling. When you have a wrestling match, you have a winner and you have a loser. And you said this, the kid that loses is chances are he's not having fun. He's like, oh man, I mean, there's the rare exception where the guy's just so happy to be there. Be like, yeah, man, I wrestled a good match. He's just better than me. Those type of mentalities are few and far between. And you talk about satisfaction. I think in everyday life, this is something that's followed me even in my professional career. It's not just satisfaction too. It's that feeling of accomplishment. And that can lead to fun. When we sit here and we record a great episode of this show and we hit stop and we hit publish, I think all 3 of us know, or whether we have Coach Gable on or another guest, we sit there and we have that feel because like, man, that was a good show. That's going to entertain people. That's going to educate people. You do that with wrestling. It's like, man, I had a good practice. I finally learned this single leg, or I finally learned how to finish that double. And I'm going to go out and win this match. There's that feeling of accomplishment. It's not necessarily always fun. I think one can lead to the others. Like when you feel good about accomplishing something, you're going to have a smile on your face. And I think that can be perceived as fun. But when we look at the performance, the word fun gets thrown around by wrestlers who win a lot, like you were saying. But I mean, let's compare both of your careers. Daryl, you're an NCAA champion at Iowa. Of course, people are going to assume you had fun because you were winning. Lee, your career at Iowa didn't go the way your brothers did. And so people are going to ask you, well, did you have fun at Iowa when, you had your brother right there winning an NCAA title and you didn't? I mean, how do you, Lee, the specific few, how do you contend with that fun question when, like a lot of wrestlers, you had a brother to follow that had some success and it didn't match? I mean, that can't be a fun situation.
Yeah, you made some good points there. I think one of the best points you made was this sense of accomplishment and things that are hard to accomplish a lot of times are not fun in the process, but the fun part, like you said, is afterwards, and knowing that like you're going to be a happier person, more fulfilled person, knowing that you were able to do the best you could, at something, just anything. Like I think as humans, to push yourself and accomplish something makes us happier. And that is the fun part. And as far as my career went, yeah, I mean, I didn't win a national title. Like I said, I started off as 8 and 9 high school freshman. I worked my way up. Next year I made the state tournament. The next year I got 4th at the state tournament. The next year I was 43-0 as a senior. I go to Iowa. I didn't start until I had spot starts throughout my career there. And then I started my whole senior year. So, and I was talking to Daryl about this earlier, even though I didn't, win a national title, I made progress every year. And I think, again, that is part of being fulfilled. I was telling Daryl, like, I don't get depressed, like in my life that, I get a little blue sometimes, but not really. I don't think I've ever been like fully depressed, but the times I've ever even came close is when whatever it was in, like in business or sports or whatever, I felt like I was taking a step backwards. And I think that's a huge part of this, is being able to know that you're doing the right things and you're moving forward and you're getting better and you're progressing. If you're doing that, you can put yourself through a lot of things to accomplish great things, So, and I think we talked about the Penn State guys. I think where they are with this, obviously, if you listen to any of their interviews, they, you can have a fun count. If you had a drinking game with the Penn State interviews, and
you'd be trashed after every press release, man. I mean, it'd be like every press conference.
Gratitude and fun. It'd be worse than like The Bachelor and Amazing and
By the way, we're not advocating drinking games for your team for fun, by the way. We're not advocating.
Anyways, well, at nationals, if they put the interviews up on the board and we're in the suite.
And you're 21 years of age and your season's
done. And you're 21.
Yeah. There's some caveats to that.
I'm done. Yeah. So anyways, but I think with him, like we were saying, it's a sales pitch. At this point, at Penn State, this is a sales pitch. And it obviously seems to be working pretty good. They are attracting a talent like has never before been amassed. And I think that is attractive. Like, especially, I think it might work at a college level because these guys, they know how to work hard. And at that point, maybe it is about teaching these guys how to be, the elementary school wrestler in them again, and bringing it back to obviously I think the biggest thing you want to avoid is fear. Having fear is to me is the opposite of fun. And if you can eliminate that as much as possible and you're moving forward and you're getting better, you're going to be having fun. And you're probably the less fear and the more you're fulfilled and moving forward and get better, you're going to have fun in the wrestling room because you're getting better. And you're going to, the most fun I ever had was my senior year in high school when I didn't lose a match. And I was, in the wrestling room, I was beating everyone for the most part. And that was pretty fun. At Iowa, there was a lot of hard days to push myself through, but I can live, I made it through that program. I got better every year. I don't kick myself at all for being a starter we won 5 team titles when I was there. That was awesome. So I don't know. I was kind of all over the place there, but this whole thing comes down to dealing with pressure. When you start throwing this out there, it's like how to deal with pressure, and some people and you can talk about having fun with it, but everybody's got a little bit different way of I'm not talking about the matches that you're going to win. It's the ones where you've been training for years. You've been working hard to win a state title, to be national champ, whatever it is, and you're not sure you're going to accomplish this. It's real easy to get overwhelmed by negative thoughts and go out there and kind of crack under the pressure and not perform up to your optimal level. If you can go out and the whole key is if you can go out there and perform at your best, even if you've trained for 15 years and you're in college and you want to win a national title, and that's, you've been dreaming about it forever, and you go out there and you wrestle just the most unbelievable match, you've just thrown everything but the kitchen sink at the guy, and you get beat, it's going to suck. But you're going to take that loss a lot better than if you go out there and you're just frozen up with pressure and you don't actually, you stand around the whole match and you don't do anything. So it's all about it's all about getting your mind in that optimal state. And some people just got to tell themselves, I'm going to have fun, blah, blah, blah. But like I said, that my big hang up is if you really start preaching that, and then you have younger athletes or parents hearing this and they latch onto it, and their kids struggling, and then it's just like, well, I'm just not having fun. These guys over here say I got to have fun. Maybe this isn't for me. So that's what my hang up and with this whole thing is, because I had to battle that as a coach. When you're trying to instill these life lessons and build this character, it's overarching, and they're able to latch on to something like that. And I'm going to go back to when we started talking about this, I looked up the definition, and I think this goes back to where a lot of this comes from. And, so I'm like, okay, should fun be the focus? And I'm not talking about, you should have fun doing things and, going to practice, hanging out with your buddies at practice and playing games at practice. There should be fun components, but is that the overarching goal of this thing? Okay. And the definition of fun is enjoyment, amusement,
or lighthearted pleasure. Okay. I mean, do you want to train, go to practice for years and years, and you've mastered the skill of lighthearted pleasure? No. I mean, like Lee said, there's a million ways to get good at that. But then I thought about it, and I looked up satisfaction, and that's, if you learn to become satisfied with daily, baby steps forward every single day and little victories and having the right perspective. And this is where I think things go off course in society right now. Because let me read you the definition of satisfaction: fulfillment of one's wishes, expectations, or needs, or the pleasure derived from this. All right. And what really stands out to me is the third word, fulfillment of one's. And this is about the athletes. And there's the pressure typically when you're dealing with athletes as they come up in youth and high school, they typically don't have problems dealing with the pressure they put on themselves. That makes them sharper, makes them better. It's when a coach has expectations, or a parent has expectations that are ahead of where they're at, maybe. And that's where the pressure comes in. And like Lee mentioned, the fear comes in, and that's not fun. When you're going to practice, I thank God, I've talked about this many times. I thank God my parents supported me, but they drove me to practice. They got me everything I needed. But I never lost a match and got chewed out by my mom or my dad. If I lost a match and I went and I kicked a trash can and showed my rear in the hallway, yeah, then I did. Then I got called out on it. So, I think a lot of where all this thing it all comes down to dealing with pressure. How do you deal with pressure? Let's make this fun, and there's, like I said, it's a sales pitch that is very effective, and you should use it if it's going to do good things. But it all comes down to satisfaction, and it all comes down to realizing that it's their gig. This is, this fifth grader that's out there wrestling. It's not about a parent that's embarrassed because they lost a match in the stands and they're mad and they're going to go take it out on their kid. That's not what it's about. It's about that kid. That kid needs to learn to lose the match and go back and start working hard and make steps forward every single day. That's what it's all about. And when those lines get crossed, that's when the pressure comes in. That's when you have to start selling them on the fun factor and all that stuff.
Now, one thing, Daryl, when you're coaching high school, and this is something that I've actually gotten some feedback on, there's shows out there, and you've come from a winning culture at Don Bosco, winning culture at Iowa, winning culture at Christiansburg. And a lot of those winning cultures, again, breed that fun feeling that's outside of the actual performance of the wrestlers. It's, when you're winning state championships, people want to be part of the program. It's one of the things that drew me to the sport of wrestling. Is, I'll be honest with you, when I'm starting wrestling as a 16-year-old at Pocosin High School, if we were 5-22 and one of the worst teams in the district, I guarantee you I probably wouldn't have been in that room. The fact that we had success was kind of infectious throughout. And you see that with any type of the bandwagon effect with football and sports teams. Like, people want to be around a winner, and it's fun to be around a winner, and it's fun to be around a winning culture. Well, you can go back and hear several different episodes on Daryl explaining how to build that winning culture. But there's also comes in waves. Like the winning culture, when you're at Christiansburg, some years you've probably got 15, 20 extra guys that they're not seeing time. And some years you might have 7 or 8 because the idea of having fun it goes in waves. Like this group of kids, they came through together. They're going to stick through thick and thin, whether or not they're starters or not. They're good. They're all in. And then sometimes you go, okay, well, I'm not starting. I'm not having fun. I'm not going to be around here. How do you contend with dealing with the whole fun thing where, that's an excuse and you create the fun culture. You get kids to come out at the high school level because you're winning. When that stops happening, there's obviously a correlation between kids saying they're having fun on a winning team and kids stop having fun when they're on a losing team.
That's my issue right there. You cannot base your philosophy and your expectations on having fun. Having a successful program can attract more people. But even in Christiansburg, Virginia, having umpteen state titles, it wasn't a huge wrestling community. We still had to work our tail off. But the second they come in, you got to know you got to start instilling the proper philosophy and the proper mindset and expectations, because it's going to be tough. So if they come in and it's all about, hey man, we're winning state titles every year and you're going to have a blast, you're going to be a rock star, blah, blah, blah. And these kids come out and it's like, oh man, let's have fun. And then it starts getting really hard and they get their tail whooped and they don't ever win. And they got to put on this goofy singlet and do all this stuff. If you haven't set their mindset properly and got them to understand that, hey, it's not about being a rock star. It's not about being known as a Christiansburg wrestler. If that's your motivation and that's why you're coming in every day, you're not going to last very long. It's about, building character. It's about coming in every single day and setting your mind to work hard that day and get a little bit better and listening to coaches and based off of the things I've been talking about, based off of how to achieve that satisfaction, and with little victories every single day, because that's the only way you're going to get through a sport like wrestling. If you're just banking on fun times, you're going to have a rough time at it.
Now, and there's situations where we do want to use the word fun in a positive manner in terms of this is the extraneous stuff, the games that we play in practice, steal the bacon, dodgeball, that type of things. When you actually talk about real fun, not manufactured fun, but all right, let's have some fun with these guys. What are some things that you can draw from? Be like, yeah, this part of the sport is fun. This is what we can do to make it fun, while not being, the focal point is like, yeah, fun. When somebody, you throw fun at their faces, when it's not Penn State, you throw fun down there, they're going to get sick of it. So, whether it's games, team building trips, what type of things, I think with that success, it's not, you can have a culture of success without winning matches. Again, it goes back to that feeling of accomplishment, that success, that satisfaction you guys are talking about. But practices that you found that say, the kids are getting something out of this, more than just the technique, more than just the winning. What are some things that you've seen over the years? I guess I can throw this both to Daryl and Lee about that you've seen. It's like, the kids really enjoy this and it helps their performance. It may not actually carry maybe a fun tag, but I'm having fun coaching these kids doing these activities and it looks like they're responding favorably.
Yeah. It's all, as a coach, it's all about engagement. You got to keep those kids engaged, and you got to be kind of a character in the practice room. There was, I see ex-wrestlers. For some reason, a lot of my ex-wrestlers think I'm funny, because I was always trying to keep their attention in practice, and by being a character, by changing up drills. You can use games to do that. You can there's a lot of different ways, but you're right. It's all about engagement and reading your kids and, getting the most out of them and keeping them interested and making sure, they're coming in for the right reasons. It's a juggling act. And then as a high school coach, I was telling Lee this, high school coaching high school might be the toughest level to coach, because you want to win at the high school level. You've got kids that have probably you're going to have state champions. In some programs, you got kids that are wanting to go to college. So you got to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And then you got kids coming out of the halls, first year wrestlers. So you got to be able to juggle all of that and make sure you're hooking this kid on the sport. So he'll come back because he's a first year wrestler, and you're getting this defending state champ exactly what he needs. I think it's the biggest thing is you got to keep it interesting. You got to keep it. You do have to keep it fun. And keep them entertained. And that can be done a lot of ways, by what you're saying to them, the types of techniques you're working, the drills you use, the games you integrate, the warm up types, exercises you're doing, all kinds of stuff. So you're right. You got to keep them engaged. And I'm not saying that by no means that you shouldn't have fun wrestling. I'm just saying that if that's all you're looking for, you're going to struggle in a sport like wrestling. In a sport like wrestling, to me, the overarching guts of your program philosophy, number one is to keep kids out, get them out, keep them out. So there's got to be a fun aspect to it. They got to enjoy it. But when they leave, you got to make sure that they understand, built the life lessons, learn the life lessons, built the character that this sport can offer. And if all you're worried about is them not getting their feelings hurt and just having fun all the time, it's probably not going to happen.
Lee, from your experiences, what have you got? What do you have to capitalize or follow up on that?
Yeah. I think to me, probably the funnest aspect of wrestling was the teammates. You know, that you were going through this with a group of guys, then everyone was going through the same thing. Everyone was, and I think this is maybe why successful programs attract people, because first off, I think a lot of times successful programs are built off of coaches that they're good at doing things like Daryl's saying, where they're good at both making it fun, or engage, they engage the kids and they know how to push the kids. So I think that's a skill that coaches should probably work on. But for me, anytime I had a difficult time in the sport, I didn't have the thought of leaving my teammates, quitting the sport or something. That didn't even cross my mind. So the more you can make your teammate, the closer knit the teammates can be, and that's doing stuff together outside of the wrestling. That's all, that's only going to make that. And that's the fun stuff you do. And the more you make your team a community, or not sure what you want to call it, but
that's a big part of building a good program is building that community and getting parents involved and having functions outside, having, banquets and getting people fundraising together and building that community. That's a huge part of building a good program for sure.
So, Daryl, as we wrap up this episode, we're talking about should fun be the goal of wrestling? I mean, have we answered the question? Most of the time when we see a question in like a headline or a newspaper or any type of BuzzFeed ad, the first thing is going to be your first inclination is usually that answer is no. So how do we answer this question? Should fun be the goal of wrestling, or should fun be a goal in wrestling?
Fun should be a goal in wrestling. And like I said, what really got me fired up about this subject was you got to be careful that young athletes, parents of young athletes who maybe don't have much experience in sports, don't think that everything should be peaches and cream and everything's got to be fun. There should be fun aspects to it. But the overarching goal is, they're going to have to learn how to deal with tough times and keep things in perspective and make sure it's about the kid, not about what the parent wants the kid to do or the coach expect. It's got to be about developing that kid and getting them to develop an internal drive as quickly as possible. So, definitely fun is a part of it. But it's more about learning to gain satisfaction from working hard and progress.
Yeah, to me, if I had to answer that, like if on the headline, is fun the goal of wrestling or what, I would say no. I would say no. Fulfillment is. That's the satisfaction, like Daryl said. And I was looking up the definition of fulfillment, and it's satisfied or happy because of fully developing one's ability or character. And to me, that's like absolutely the goal of wrestling. And part of being fulfilled is learning how to have fun in a situation like that, like in a situation in a hard wrestling practice. So yeah, that's part of fully developing your abilities and character, is to be able to embrace a sport like wrestling that's difficult with a healthy attitude and a good attitude, a fun attitude. Like that's truly having fun and fulfilled. And for sure it's the best approach to reaching your potential, as opposed to like fearing it, so.
Fearing failure. That's same in life. That's wrestling in life.
Yeah. And I go back to Jason. I'm a podcast nut. There was like a Radio Lab. You ever listen to Radio Lab podcast?
Oh
Jason?
yeah, I've dabbled in the Radio Lab.
Yeah, they had one on football, like the origins of football, and they went back to it used to just be the Harvards, Yales, and all those, and it was essentially invented after the Civil War as a way for these, because there was no like big wars going on, so these kids needed a way to like just do something to improve themselves and show themselves to the community. And this football, I mean, that's why football is what it is. It's like essentially a little mini battlefield. And I found it really interesting, and I'm sure like it's a lot more fun than going to war. Going to wrestling practice is a lot more fun than going to war and a football game. But it's a way to just to do something hard and be fulfilled. And that's what sports are for, to do something difficult and embrace it in a way that's fun but pushing yourself to reach your fullest abilities.
Amen.
I think that's a safe place to wrap up this episode of the Attack Style Wrestling Podcast. Should fun be the goal of wrestling? I think we might have answered that with maybe changing the answer to the question, rather changing the, how do you say that in a professional word, guys? It's changing the question to a different one, so you elicit a different response. So with NCAA champion Gerald Weber and Lee Weber with Attack Style Wrestling, we thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, rate and review. Check out everything, all the products, services, and Gable trained at attackstylewrestling.com.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.